a lot of Christian dogma, Christian doctrine, is impacted by the image of God. So this is not a small subject. Society, Christian doctrine, worldview are all influenced by the image of God. And if you don't have a good understanding of that image, then you'll really fail to know how to function in the society. You won't really understand Christian doctrine fully, and your worldview will be skewed. And it'll be pretty clear. I mean, I don't need to talk to somebody more than 5 minutes to know that their worldview is upside down. And some of it, or much of it, is traced back to a faulty view of who man is.
You know, it's funny because you said people 40 and over in the Bible Belt here probably aren't having the same problems that people younger than them are on this subject. But I would also say that probably some of the reason younger people are having this problem is because the over 40 crowd doesn't know why they believe what they do. In other words, I was handed this pattern down from my parents, and they were handed it down from their parents, and I went to hand it to my kid, and he didn't pick that up. He picked up a different pattern, and I'm not sure why, but it's weird. It doesn't feel right. But you know it's not based in your view of man, your view of humanity, your view of creation that God has, the biblical. It's just like, wow, you know, I'm this way, and my son took on a whole different set of values that I would have ever expected. And while an over 40 person in the Bible Belt might know what they believe, I don't think they understand why they believe it well enough to hand it off to the next generation.
So again, I was listening to a sermon this morning, yesterday, and the gentleman was saying that your average parishioner can't explain to you what salvation is, how it happens. Well, I'd broaden that a little bit. I think your average Joe person in the pew doesn't understand the image of God, and if you ask them to explain it to you and give you the essential importance of it, they'd be at their wits' end. So how are you going to develop a worldview and you can't explain man who's included in that worldview?
Right.
I mean, it's not even possible.
Yeah, I think that the implications of what this teaching, what this doctrine, what this truth is, are so far-reaching and go in so many different directions and so deeply that if you mess this up, you end up mixed up on a lot of different things.
And we aren't saying that this doctrine saves you.
No,
that's a different discussion. So I could be a 40-year-old man, teach my daughter explicitly the truth, and she end up doing something that is against that very image. That doesn't necessarily mean that I failed, but a parent has to ask himself, did my children reject in light of truth or in the vacuum of truth?
right.
And oftentimes, if we'd be honest, their viewpoints are different because there was a vacuum of truth
Right.
that we did not fill. We thought, well, I bring them to Sunday school, and we don't understand that these issues are reinforced in the home, which is why, by the way, in this series, we're going to do something a little different than we normally do. You're actually going to come up and talk to the parents and say, hey, parents, listen up. This is what you need to understand about this doctrine, what you just heard, and how it impacts what you do in the household. What are your plans for that block of time?
Yeah, so what it's done is made me very critical of myself and the way my wife and I have taught our kids. As you know, we have 6 kids, and how I did this, number one, came straight to mind. Number two, and this is obviously the wrong order, I thought about how the Bible directs you to do it, and I started thinking about, differences or missed opportunities and that kind of stuff. I always think that way. It's not fun and it's not healthy, but I think that way. Anyways, what I plan on doing is being able to sort of take a parental mulligan at this point and say, if I was doing this over again, knowing now what I know now, and what would I want my child to understand, and therefore what do I want our church to teach to its youngest, attendees, and what do I hope our parents teach to theirs? Now, I did teach on the image of God with my kids, and I taught the importance of it at almost every age. But also the world has turned a few times since that's happened.
Big time.
And so there's now more, there are some applications of this that I never found necessary or whatever to talk about with my kids. And so now as I take my mulligan, I'm going to broaden that a little bit. When I taught on this in my family, it was how do you treat other people, and why is it you can scream at a tree but you can't scream at your sister? Well, ultimately it's the image of God, and that's just one application of that we treat people differently than the rest of creation.
But I can't get a rise from a tree.
Yeah. I mean, it goes into things like how what is a person's worth? When you stop producing, does that mean we don't have any value in us and that kind of thing?
Good question.
And so one of the things that I try to teach my kids is that people have value no matter what they can produce or what they can contribute. They have value. So there were implications of this as I taught that come out of the image of God and straight out of the Bible, like how you talk to somebody based on the image of God is an argument from Scripture. But there's just so much more. And what you find is, what's kind of beautiful about this doctrine in my mind is that God sets a principle, and it doesn't matter what kind of culture you live in. It doesn't matter how the culture's changed and that kind of thing. It's nuances to the same principle, but it's not a different principle. It's the image of God, and no matter how creative we get in tearing up that idea, it's still the idea.